In Megabonk, not all items are easy to understand exactly how they work. Some items, like the ice cube, says that it has a chance to deal ice damage, but how much damage is that exactly? And other items, like the Phantom Shroud, claims that you deal 2x damage after evading, but that's actually not quite true. And then there are items like the Golden Shield, which are really obvious. You simply get gold from taking damage, but again, how much? And how much more do you get if you have multiple of them? These are some of the questions that I will be answering in today's video. First up, let's start with the ice cube. The description says that you have a 20% chance to inflict ice damage when hitting enemies, and ice can now freeze enemies. So, what is ice damage? Well, whenever the ice cube procs, it deals your normal hit damage plus a second hit of ice damage, and that ice hit is 40% of the original hit. So in this footage here, you can see that my normal hit is 9 damage, and then sometimes it also procs the ice damage, which hits for 4 damage in this case. If you happen to deal crit damage, it also does 40% of that damage. So if you crit for 18, the ice cube will hit for 7. It's always just 40% of the original hit. If you have multiple ice cubes, these scale linearly. So with one ice cube, it's 40% damage, with 2, it's 80, and with 5, it's 200%. Now, besides being a great damage dealer, it also has a chance to freeze enemies whenever it procs. Now, freezing does not mean the enemy becomes stunned. The freeze debuff simply makes the enemy slower by 70% for 3 seconds. This 3-second duration does not increase with more copies of the ice cube, but the chance to freeze does. This freeze chance starts at 40% and uses a hyperbolic scaling formula, meaning that each copy adds less than the previous one, but it gradually approaches 100%. So the first few copies of the ice cube will increase this chance by kind of a lot, and then it gets less and less with diminishing returns. As for how often it procs or how often it deals ice damage, well, the description says it has a 20% chance. That number is actually the raw input and is fed into another hyperbolic scaling formula, which means that the actual proc rate for one ice cube is closer to 28.6%. And just like the freeze chance, stacking more ice cube increases proc chance with diminishing return and approaches 100%, but it never quite reaches it. But since the damage scaling is linear, this is a very strong item to have a lot of copies of, and it's also why you often see them on top of the damage leaderboard at the end of a run. Next up, let's talk about the Phantom Shroud. The description says that after evading, deal 2x damage your next attack. Well, this part is actually not quite true. As you can see here in the footage, when I'm dealing normal damage before evading, I deal 9 damage. And then after evading once, I deal 14 damage. That is 1.5x damage, not 2x. This damage boost lasts for 3 seconds, by the way. However, if you evade again before the 3-second timer runs out, then you will deal 2x damage for the next 3 seconds. With one copy of the item, if you keep evading 4 times before the timer refreshes, you will actually deal 3x damage. This is the cap for this item though, so if you keep evading after this point, it will simply keep refreshing the 3-second timer. But if you can keep doing that, you will essentially just keep dealing 3x damage indefinitely. The attack speed scaling works the same way. Each evade gives you plus 25% attack speed and maxes out at 100% after 4 evades. As for the movement speed, your first copy gives you plus 50% extra movement speed after evading once. This mechanic doesn't stack the same way though, because after evading the first time you simply get this 50% extra movement speed and you cannot gain more from evading multiple times. If you get a second copy of Phantom Shroud, the duration window increases by 0.5 seconds, so now you have 3.5 seconds between each evade to keep stacking up damage bonuses. With the second copy, you can also keep evading up to 8 times, and at that point you will have reached 5x damage and plus 200% attack speed. So each copy adds 0.5 seconds to the duration of the refresh timer until you reach 7 copies. At that point, the timer is capped at 6 seconds, and more copies won't increase the time window. But every copy will keep adding 4 more possible evades, which means your maximum damage keeps increasing by 2x per copy and your attack speed by another 100%, as long as you can keep evading inside of the time window. Next up, let's talk about idle dews. The description says that the longer you stand still, the more damage you do. Max 100% damage. Idle dews gives you 4% damage per second of standing still, and after 25 seconds you reach the 100% damage cap. Interestingly enough, you can actually move a little bit and still keep this damage bonus. This is because whenever you start standing still, the game creates a tiny 1.75 unit camp zone around you. And as long as you stay inside of this circle, you keep the multiplier. This is a very small zone though, so you definitely cannot move too much here. I've heard some people say that you keep the bonus if enemies push you around, but that is not true. Leaving the zone for any reason simply resets the multiplier. Multiple copies of this increases your maximum cap by 100% each, but you also have to stand still for 25 seconds more to reach that extra damage boost. So for 2 copies you reach 200% after 50 seconds, and with 3 copies you reach 300% after 75 seconds, and so on. Next up, let's look at the golden shield. This one is pretty straightforward. You get extra gold when you take damage. How much gold you get depends on your level when you pick it up. If you pick it up at level 0, you get 3 golds per hit. If you pick it up at level 30, you get 9 gold per hit. This value is only calculated on pickup and does not update automatically. So if you pick it up at level 0, you'll gain 3 gold forever, even at level 100, unless you pick up another copy. This level bonus is capped at level 100, so the maximum gold from one shield is 23 per hit. Getting multiple golden shields stacks linearly, so each copy gives the same amount of gold and all copies add together. Now, sometimes it might feel like a second copy does much more than that, but that's because when you pick up a second copy of the golden shield, it also recalculates how much gold you should be getting from the first golden shield. So for instance, if you pick up the first copy of golden shield at level 0, you would have gotten 3 gold every time you took damage until now. But now when you pick up a second copy at level 30, it'll recalculate how much you should be getting from each copy of the shield. And since your level is higher, you now get 9 gold per damage taken from each shield, which would get you a total of 18 gold per hit with 2 shields at this point. Next up, let's look at the gamer goggles. The description says that increase damage to lower your HP. This only applies when you're below 50% HP. If you're above that, you will get no damage increase. At 40% HP, you gain plus 20% damage, and as you approach 0 HP, you also approach plus 100% damage. Each additional pair of these stack linearly, so 2 copies can get you up to 200% at 0 HP, and 3 copies can get you up to 300% more damage, and so on. Finally, let's look at the turbo skates. The description says that the faster you move, the more attack speed you gain. Max 40% per stack. With one pair, this works exactly as described. If you move at 1.4x your base speed, you get plus 40% attack speed, and this is the max for one pair. So roughly 10% more movement speed gives you 10% more attack speed. This is very easy to reach if you just jump around or walk around somewhat normally. The way it stacks is kinda interesting though, because with 2 copies you gain up to plus 160% attack speed if you move 1.8x your base speed. With 3 copies this will be up to 360% attack speed at 2.2x base speed. And moving at these speeds are very easy to achieve even without any movement items. You can achieve it just by bunny hopping around normally. At 5 copies you need to reach 3x your base speed, which becomes somewhat harder without movement items like turbo socks or the cloak, but the scaling of this item is still extremely strong and is honestly kind of ridiculous. But of course you do need to move fast to keep up the attack speed here. Anyway, that's all the items I have for today. If you don't know, I have 2 other videos on my channels that go through more items in detail. There's still a bunch of items I haven't gone through yet, so if you have any requests you can leave them in the comment section and I might just do it in another video. But that's all for today. Peace.